Hello, hello. Welcome back to another video in the Let's Solve Tactics series. So let's see where we left off. Yeah, we had left off at the 1841 rating on chess.com tactics trainer. So let's keep going. It is white to play. Uh, as usual, go ahead if you would like to pause your video. So yeah, we have an endgame where I have an extra pawn against his knight. So somewhat desperate situation, but the good thing for me is these two are connected passed pawns. So let's see if we can make use of them. Okay, so yeah, I think that's all there is to it. So in terms of candidates, pushing either pawn is a candidate. Uh, Maybe it might be important to stop the knight from coming back in time. So yeah, I don't know. Some kind of king move could be a candidate, but I'll start with the pawn moves. Pawn to c7 check, very forcing. Forces king to c8 because if no king to c8, then the next move I checkmate him with the by making a queen. So king c8 is forced, and there, hmm, I do have this idea of going king to c6 and pawn b6 b7 mate. So a pawn mate with two pawns. That's an idea. So after king to c8, uh, I mean c7 check king to c8, I can go b6, but I'm not really threatening b7. And also his king could then, could he? Not sure. Okay, so I really want to see if the mate works because that'll be great. So c7 check, king to c8, king c6. The idea being now the king is totally stalemated. So I'm looking at this here and my king, moving my king to c6. So the king is totally stalemated, and my plan is to go b6, b7 with a checkmate using my two pawns. Now, after king to c6, it is black's move, and obviously he has to move the knight, I think, to stop my plan. So where does he go? He cannot check the king on c6 just yet, but he could probably go to a square where he would be able to check me on the next move. So knight to e6 makes sense. Preparing a check from d8 or d4. Yeah. Hmm. After knight to e6, if pawn to b6, then what does he have? Knight to d8 check is not really an option because yeah, my pawn on c7 will capture, followed by I'll play b7 and I'll make a queen with the b pawn. So he can go knight to d4 check maybe. Knight to d4 check. That does ruin my plans, I think, to a little bit. There is no mate. My king has to move. So, okay. Hmm. Maybe there are some other ideas. What if I start with the b pawn? Yeah. So, if b6, he doesn't have any checks at this point. Moving the king doesn't really threaten me. And I'm just, getting a head start on my plan of I have multiple ideas. After b6, I can just promote the b pawn or push the c pawn with my pawn mate idea. So b6, what does he do with the knight? He is not able to check me. So let's say he goes knight to e6 again. Now, if knight to e6 and I go pawn to b7, he is still not able to check me and he is not able to prevent b8 queen. So that should be losing, I think. Uh, is he gonna be able to fork my king and the new queen? To fork the king on d6 and the queen on b8, where would you need to be? Is that even forkable? That's not forkable, is it? No. Okay, that's not forkable. Okay. Right. Okay. So pawn to b6. If the king moves to c8, uh, if the king moves to c8, and if I go pawn to b7 check, king goes to b8, then I think if after pawn to b6, if king c8, I can go. What do I do? Pawn to b7 check, king b8, pawn to c7 check, king takes b7, king d7. Now the knight has to move, but I'm checking him with queen, so that should be winning. Pawn to b6 looks cleaner, I feel. Knight e6, knight d3, none of the moves I don't think stop me. Pawn to c7 check, king c8. I don't think pawn to b6 threatens anything by itself. I need queen king c6 to do the pawn mate in that variation. So I think pushing the b pawn is correct. I may be wrong, but I'm gonna go with that. Okay, so far so good. Okay, here I was thinking simply playing b7 check, but let's see. B7 check, king has to go to b8. Now I can go c7 check just to do everything with checks. And yeah, he has to take my pawn on b7, and now king d7. And now he has a moment of, relief. So what could he do in that moment? He cannot control the c8 square, so I think that should be good. Let's see. Okay, so far so good. And here I really thought check followed by this. And okay, we got it right. Okay, good problem, that one. Yeah, let's keep going. Okay, white plays an interesting move. It's black to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause your video. So white has just sacrificed their knight, but maybe their point is they will take this bishop on h6. Okay, let's look at the material. We both have two minor pieces. White has a bishop and knight. I have two bishops. Yeah, the remaining material looks equal. So yeah, material is equal. Okay. So of course, if I take the knight, I think then it's just an equal trade. He can either trade queens or not and take the bishop on h6. So I have to do something smarter right here. Also, my queen is attacked, of course. So, and there'll be three ways to take the knight. So taking the knight is not the right answer. I mean, it might be, but there are three ways, and the rook or either pawn. So one of them could be correct for some reason. Actually, now that I say that out loud, I just notice that maybe rook takes knight, and when the bishop captures on h6, I have pawn to g5. So rook takes knight, bishop takes bishop, pawn to g5, threatening the bishop and trapping it, preventing it from going back. That could be interesting. How does white get out of that? I don't think he does. So that, to me, that looks like the solution. Take. Now this nice move, g5, and we win the bishop for a pawn. Okay, wonderful. We got 10 points, and yeah, not a very high pass rate, so we did pretty well. Let's keep going. Okay, black to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause your video. So yeah, a lot of things hanging in this position. So his knight is hanging, the bishop is looking at the knight, there is pressure around the oops, that's not something I meant to do, so I need to leave the piece in a square where it cannot go. Okay, sorry. So there is pressure around, the king position, like all of these pieces you can see just pressuring, the king side. So some kind of tactics associated with the king might be possible. Hmm. hmm There is also this bishop hanging out here. There is the queen, which could be short of squares. A move like bishop b6 almost almost traps the queen. It can go to a6. Yeah, so a lot of options, which makes it not a very easy problem. Okay, let's see, what can we do? Mm, where do we start? Maybe we just start with a check. Bishop takes f2 check. So also, does white have any threats? Not with his queen. I don't think with his queen he's threatening anything. All his pieces look very, discoordinated, if that's a word. Some pieces are here, some pieces are here. Every piece is kind of by itself, not really working together. Okay. So yeah, let's see. Bishop takes pawn, knight takes pawn. And do I have something? I could go queen g3, threatening mate on g2. And how does he prevent? He can. The knight will be pinned at that point. So I'm threatening. Oops, sorry, the knight is not pinned. My bad. Okay. So bishop takes knight. Sorry, bishop takes pawn on f2. Knight takes f2. Queen g3. He can go to e4 with the knight or bishop and block me out. So if he goes to e4, if he goes to e4 with the knight, then I take the rook on e1. So that is nice. So if he goes to e4 with the bishop, so if I take the bishop with my bishop, then if his knight captures, I can again take his rook on e1. And if his rook captures, then yeah, he captures with the rook. Okay, so I'm looking at bishop takes pawn, knight takes pawn, queen to g3, threatening queen g2 mate. Now bishop back to e4, blocking my bishop. And now if I take, he can take with the rook. But in that position, I don't have rook c1 because the knight guards. Yeah, but I have. Do I have rook c2? Rook c2 threaten the mate on g2. His queen is not able to help out as far as I can tell. Let's look at the other options too. That may be the answer, but we'll see. It's a complicated position. Rook c2 not possible right now because the bishop takes. Queen e4 is not possible. What else? With the queen, don't really see much. Queen takes f2 I don't think works. Attacking the knight with pawn to f5 or something is possible, but again, don't know where that is leading us. Taking on g2 doesn't look right. Bishop to b6 is the other appealing candidate. It's very forcing. Attacks the queen. The queen really has to go to a6, I think. Then how do we attack it again? I don't think we do. And suddenly, uh, yeah, no, certainly nothing. But yeah. So okay. Hmm. Let's look at that bishop takes f2 move again. That may be correct, but I may be wrong. Also, yeah, moving the rook, you know, will be a discovery on the knight here. So let's see what kind of moves can the rook make. Hmm. Just notice something. Uh, Rook takes a4 is very interesting. Rook takes pawn here. The point is, if he takes back, then I may win his queen with check and then winning the queen. That's interesting. Could I reverse the move order on that? What if I take on f2 first and then take on a4? So bishop takes f2, knight takes f2, rook takes a4. I'm hitting both the knight and the queen. Let's see. And the queen could go to c3, I think. Then I can take on a2 with the rook, and I threaten stuff down the second rank, which is somewhat hard to deal with. I don't think the queen has other squares to go to, or does he? No. Yeah, so bishop takes f2 definitely looks correct, and I'm going to play it. I've invested enough time, and either after knight takes f2, either there is rook takes a4, or there may be other continuations that I was initially looking at with uh, queen g3, which is very quiet, but we'll see. Okay, wrong, of course. I get a 1 point though. So okay, not gonna. Yeah, I'm just gonna look at the solution. Let's see what I missed there. Bishop b6. Okay, queen g3. Ooh, wow, that's a long and tough problem. Wow, it goes for a while. Huh. What's the pass percentage? Pass rate is 0.00. Nobody on on earth has solved this. Well, that makes us feel better. But let's look at this. Okay, so queen a5. Yeah, so you hit the queen. And now I had seen this, but I didn't realize that there was a good follow-up. Queen g3. What's the point of this? Why not queen g3 right away? I missed queen g3, I have to admit. Not realizing that, this pin was preventing this move. Otherwise, yeah, that's a big miss on my part, for sure. What is the point? The computer says bishop e4. He can block, yeah, which I understand. And take, nothing. And what's happening with the queen being distracted? So now queen g3, bishop e4. Still don't get it. Rook takes. Wow. So I'm threatening rook takes rook, mate. And if he takes, we probably just take back, and this checkmate is hard to defend, huh? So the queen was helping out, I guess. That's the point of this. How is the queen helping out? I still don't get it. Wow, I still don't get what's the point of this solution. Let's see. So queen g3 right away. Bishop e4. Yeah, he guards against the mate in the only way possible. Oh, it's not about the queen helping out. By moving the bishop to b6, I add another attacker to the e4 square. The rook attacks e4. Oh wow, that's nice. That's a nice tactic. That's a tough one. Wow, that's really tough. Queen g3, and now bishop e4 is not as good because now e4 is attacked by my rook and my bishop, which wouldn't be the case if the bishop was still here. My rook wouldn't be attacking it. So now rook takes e4. threatening mate, and yeah, this is, yeah, basically hard to stop. If this, then just take, and I'm threatening mate next move, and yeah, black has to give some spite checks. He doesn't have anything better. So check here, check, and yeah, gives up his queen. Okay, not black, white. I mean, yeah. Hmm. Wow, that's a really tough one. Okay, let's keep going. Also, I forgot how we are doing on time, so maybe I'll do one or two more. Let's see. Let's see, actually. Okay, so black to play. Uh, Go ahead if you would like to pause. Okay, first thing is I need to get my orientation right. So my pawns are moving that way. Yeah, and white pawns are coming this way. Okay. Okay. So he attacks my knight, and this f pawn is passed, and this a pawn is passed. Okay. Now I think I'm getting a better handle on the position. It's a knight endgame, equal material. I think the main question is that I have these two passed pawns that are very far apart from each other. There is the f pawn and there is the a pawn, and white needs to keep both under control, which might be hard to do. So I may be able to give up my knight. So f5 comes to mind. F5. Now the king really will never catch this pawn. So he is probably, either he has to rush with the knight, which it cannot do because this pawn is two squares away from promoting, or he has to take my knight and try to promote his pawns maybe. So let's see, f5, if king takes knight, f4. Either he can push this pawn or this pawn. Let's say he starts pushing this guy. So f4, c4, f3, c5, f2, c6, f1 queen, c7, and I'm in time to go queen to f8, stopping another queen from appearing. So that didn't work. f5, king takes knight, f4, king moves somewhere, e6 or c6 or somewhere, f3, pawn d5, f2, pawn d6, f1, and again, by the time one of the pawns reaches the 7th rank, I am just in time. I've already made the queen. And if the knight comes, so if f5, let's say knight c1, f4, let's say, I don't know what, let's say knight d3, trying to, stop me on the f2 square. Then I go pawn to a2, and the other pawn, both the pawns cannot be stopped basically. And what about if white doesn't bother taking my knight? Then he's not really able to push his pawns. He needs to capture the knight, because whenever this pawn moves, my knight is able to capture it, and the other pawn is actually being blocked by the knight. So that seems correct. Take, push. My job is simple. I push my pawns. Push my pawns and push, make a queen, and we win. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, go ahead. It is black to play. Okay, so again we are facing some pawns, but the solution looks pretty simple actually, because we have this very nice outside passed pawn. So I think I give up the rook. Rook takes knight. Now if he doesn't take my rook and he goes to, let's say, a7, then my rook is guarding the b8 square, and I can just start pushing the other pawn, my h pawn, and I'm winning. And if he does take the rook, so rook takes b5, king takes b5, I have king c7, preventing the pawn from promoting. If he tries, let's say, king a6, I bring my king to b8. And now, so he's probably better off at that point. After rook takes knight, king takes knight, king c7, he's probably better off abandoning the b pawn and going after, stopping my h pawn. So king c4. So if king c4, my king is already on c7. Now if I play h5 and he goes king d3, he's inside the square, very well inside the square. Yeah, But okay. Huh. But the point is, if I don't do that, if I don't do what I just said, then next move the pawn is promoting, and I cannot really stop him. So that's the solution here. Okay, he distracts me. I think I take him, or do I not? Let's see. Okay. Why would I not take? I think I should take, right? Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, it keeps going. So, okay, that's very good. Okay, a pawn endgame. Now he has kind of moved in the wrong direction, maybe. So let's see. If h5, if he tries to catch my pawn with e4, h5, is he in the square? He's just outside the square. So with the pawn on h5, the square would be something like this. And he is actually getting in. Yeah, he's on time. Okay. So pawn h5, king here. If I push, he goes to e4, push, push. Yeah. If I push and, drag him all the way to the corner, then, let's see. Let's figure this out. This one game should be winning for me, but we need to find the right way. Now, he can try to stop my pawn, or he can try to take this guy, you know, go after this pawn and, try to make his own queen with his f pawn. Okay, so let's see. If I just push my pawn h5 and not worry about losing my, f pawn, h5, king d6, h4, king e6, h3, king takes pawn, h2, king moves to, let's say, e7, h1 queen, king moves to, actually king will probably go to g7 earlier. Yeah, king g7, h1 queen, king, pawn goes to f6. And since the pawn is on f6 and not on f7, I think I should be winning that. And so it seems to me that if white does not go after my h pawn, doesn't try to stop me, but rather just goes after this guy, goes after this pawn, then I think I'll win there. Let's look again. So h5, king d6, h4, king e6, h3, king takes pawn, h2, king g7, h1 queen, pawn to f6. And I'm just in time. Just in time. I think, if the pawn was on the 7th rank, then sometimes there are stalemating tricks with the f pawn. But since the pawn is on 6th rank, I think I should be okay. So then, am I doing any better by moving my king right now? I don't think so. King c8, king d6. I mean, then I'm not making progress with the h pawn, which I should be. So, but what if he goes after stopping my pawn? So h5, king d5, h4, king e4. Now in that position, maybe, somewhere around there, I need to start bringing my king and let him deal with, the threats of my pawn promoting, as well as me just coming and trying to win this guy. Maybe something like that. King c8, I don't know if it's correct. King c8, king d6, king d8, king e6, king e8, king f6, king here, and I think I don't win there anymore. So I think h5. Let's see. So far, so good. Okay, so since he was going up, I think he's trying to stop my pawn. So we gotta. I thought we'll just push the h pawn, but is there something better? We really need to calculate maybe. So if I move my king, king c7, king e6. If king e6 or king e4, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter, but if king c7, king e6, then what if king c7, king e6, h4, king takes f6, h3, king g7, h2, f6, h1 queen, f7, and there, since his pawn reaches the 7th rank when I queen, I think he'll be able to draw. I think I should push my pawn. That's my conclusion anyway. So far so good. So he's going after this. So now, yeah, I really think I should push my pawn. Let's look at this again. So this is what we calculated. So I don't think I'll, yeah. So h3 take pawn, h2 king g7, h1 queen. Maybe it'll make us play all of it. Yeah, it definitely will. Okay, make a queen. Okay, and he would have played f6. And how would I have won this one? I think, the technique is to bring my king closer. But first I need to inconvenience the king somehow. But okay, I'll not go into that. But yeah, it's a win. With the pawn on 7th rank, it's not a win. But with the pawn on 6th rank, it is actually a win. So let's keep going. Maybe. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah. uh, so white to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause. Uh, what is happening? I am down in material, right? Black has a extra bishop. The knight is hanging at this moment, but my bishop is also hanging and my knight is hanging. So a lot of hanging pieces. Okay. One idea that comes to mind is capturing the knight with the pawn, and then if they take my bishop, I take their bishop on e6. That could be simple enough. If I take their bishop, they take their our bishop with their knight, and I think the position has clarified, and we remain down a piece. If the knight captures their knight, that could be interesting too, because I hit the queen and hit the bishop, so they probably have to take my uh, knight. Then if I take on d5 either with the queen or some pawn, they take my bishop on h4. I really think pawn takes knight would be correct, but let's see. If pawn takes knight, if they take my bishop on h4, then I take here. And even though the position is still sharp, but I think I have recovered my material. I should be good. After pawn takes knight, what else can they try? I'm not really sure. I'm hitting their bishop. Their bishop really doesn't have much to do. He can take on d5 with his bishop. Then I take and he takes. And I've again recovered material. I think that's what I'm going to go with. Pawn takes knight. Let's see. Wrong. Okay. Oh well. Let's see. Let's try this again actually. This I think I should be able to solve. So must have gotten lazy in my calculations there. So okay. Knight takes knight. Knight takes knight. Bishop takes knight. Now do I throw in a bishop takes e7? Maybe rook e8 and then take back, something like that. And knight takes d5, bishop d5, bishop e7. Maybe that is cleaner. Okay. Yeah, my problem was I only considered capturing on d5. I think this move. And now, yeah, I guess you take this one. Huh. So how bad was my solution? Let's see. So did we get 2 wrong in this session already? Well, that would be a sign that we need to stop, but we'll see. Okay. ed5 is bad, huh? Why? Bishop h4. And here I was thinking I'll take. But what did I miss? I missed that he has this move. Oh, forking. Forking my king and rook. So, yeah, that's not good. Okay. Okay, yeah, good problem. Let's keep going. Okay, black to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause your video. What is going on? I have pressure down the G file. That's one thing. The rook on E7 is hanging. The queen on A7 is very active, but at the same time, you know, could be trapped, but also very, very active. Is he threatening mate? Queen a8 is a mate, isn't it? Yeah, so he's threatening mate. That's that's an important detail. Okay. Okay. Uh, what can I do? I could take on g2, which is very forcing. If he goes to h1, I checkmate him, so he has to take. Now the other rook could come to g8, and now he's forced to go to h1, in which case I have queen f3 check, king to h2, queen to g2 mate. Okay, that looks simple enough, I hope. Check, check. Oops, rook takes, check, check, and next move mate. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, what is happening here? It's white to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause. Okay, he just left his back rank, unprotected by moving the rook up. So that's the first thing I notice. So move like pawn to b6 really is my first reaction, trying to go queen e8 check, winning his rook, and also I'm threatening stuff, to take on a7 with the pawn or queen. What are his own threats? I don't think he has any checks, even though these pawns around my king are menacing, but there is probably a few moves time before black generates any real threats. They also block out his pieces, like, the queen and rook are blocked because of his pawns. So, okay. Pawn to b6 really looks very appealing. What can he do after pawn to b6? If he takes with either pawn, I have queen e8 check, and I'm winning the uh, rook at minimum, or yeah, it's not mate, sorry, yeah, I'm winning the rook, of course, yeah. So if he moves his rook back, let's say to h8, then I can take on a7. Other moves, queen c4 is possible, but I don't know what's the point. If queen g8, then he can always block. Yeah, I could go to g4 after that and win the rook. But anyway, pawn to b6, let's say rook h8, pawn takes a7, threatening to queen. That cannot be stopped. So maybe that's the right option. I think that is the correct answer. I hope so. Let's see. So far, so good. Now, queen to e8 was the planned move. Let's see if there is anything better. Queen to a8 check. He goes up. No follow-up. So I think this is correct. Now I take this guy. Okay. Okay. Let's maybe do one more. I would have liked to reach 1900, but I think getting some of them incorrect has held me back. But we'll see. Okay, black to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause your video. So rook is attacked, and moving the rook means I will lose my queen. Okay, so it's a pin of my rook against my queen. His own rook, both the rooks are hanging, but this one is more exposed, more open to being attacked. His queen could be under attack with bishop to g4. Could even be trapped, maybe. Okay, let's see. So let's make a list of some moves that I could try. With the rook, I don't really see any good options. Bishop to g4, hitting the queen is one option. I don't think pawn to a5, just letting him take, is a good option. Yeah, so bishop to g4. Bishop to g4. Now queen has to move, I think. He can also, take my rook first. I take back with the pawn, and then the queen moves. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it does. So okay, let's say bishop g4, queen has to move either to e3 or g3, right? So if g3, then I have bishop h4, and the queen is trapped. Yeah, okay. And if it goes to e3 instead, after bishop g4, queen e3, bishop g5, he again looks sort of trapped. And whenever he takes on c5, he may insert that somewhere. I take back with the pawn, and I think I'm doing well. So let's keep going. Let's do that. Yeah, here, take with the pawn. Queen is trapped, and now we'll win it. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, white to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause your video. So first thing I notice is I can trade my queen for two rooks. I can take on f2, he takes, I take. That's possible. Now also, and this may be an important also, after queen takes rook, when he takes, I have rook g8 check. Rook g8 check forces king d7, whereupon I have rook check on g7, and then I could, I'll have a chance to win his queen. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Any other options? Queen takes rook. Other than that, I don't actually think there are too many other options here. So queen takes rook, he takes back. Now, if I just take, that position could be playable, but maybe after he takes my queen, rook g8 check, king. Oh, wait a second. King d7 is not available, so he has to block with the queen, and I take his queen with check, and then I collect the final rook, and I'll be left with an extra rook. That is definitely correct. The key is this move. Don't take the rook immediately. First get the queen, and then take the rook next. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, black to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause your video. Hmm. Okay, so I notice one idea. It's based on this alignment of the d3 knight with the e2 square. So basically, if I trade queens, so queen takes queen, rook takes queen. Now I have bishop a6, trying to win the knight, and I pin the knight and trying to win the knight. Now, if his knight moves, then I will win the rook. So he goes rook d2, but then I take the knight, and then the knight also was guarding the bishop, which will then be unprotected, and I'll be able to take it. But I don't think doing bishop a6 right away has the same effect, so that should be correct here. And that is correct because, yeah, after rook d2, bishop takes knight, rook takes bishop, I win this piece at the end. Let's keep going. Okay, black to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause your video. Okay, so what's happening here? He has an extra knight for the moment. I could take on d3 with my knight, which will be a check. Also, his knight on c7 is hanging. My knight on e5 is hanging. And, after I take on d3, if he doesn't capture, there might also be a fork, with my knight on d3 on f2. Those are all the things that really I notice in this position. Knight takes knight is the most obvious move, but maybe there are some other moves also. I don't think taking his knight on c7 is good because he takes my knight with check. When my king moves, he can always just save his knight by moving it to c4, and I'm left with a position where he has an extra knight. So knight takes knight check. Now if he takes with the rook, I think I take back, and I have a passed pawn on d3. He will save his knight, but I should be doing well. And if he just moves his king, then I take, I guess. That's what I'm going to go with. Just using the fact that taking with the knight is a check. Check. I take this way. And it keeps going. I hadn't anticipated that it will keep going, so maybe there is another point to this. Okay. My instinct says rook c2 check, but maybe there is something else. Oh, rook c2 check. Well, the king can go to many places, or there may be other moves. Rook to c2 check, wherever the king goes. Not wherever it goes. I mean, if it goes to a3, then no, I take that back. Okay, let's see. I have a passed pawn on d3 now. If I go rook to d8, his knight can always sit on d4 and make that difficult. So rook c2 check really appeals to me. I don't know what else. I'm going to play this. Okay, so far so good. Let's keep going. Okay. Black to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause your video. Okay. So I notice this knight that is attacked once by my queen and defended by his queen. So could be a potential problem. Other than that, there are some alignments. The alignment of his queen and knight, the alignment of his queen and bishop, and so on. Okay, so I think I'll try to distract the queen from the knight first. So maybe pawn to c5. So pawn to c5. What can he do? Where can he go to stay in touch with the knight? He could go to c3, or he could go to f4. If he goes to f4, then after bishop to d6, I pin the knight, and also he's not able to play bishop to d4 because my pawn on c5 controls the d4 square. So I should be winning the knight there. So after pawn to c5, if he goes to b4, now, sorry, not b4, I mean c3. If he goes to c3, then I can go pawn to b4, and if he takes with the pawn, I take with my a pawn, and I think I have forced him to move away from defending the knight. If he goes to, let's say, d3, I can take the knight with the queen, and I should be doing well. Other moves like bishop to d6 right away, he can, let's say, move his knight back to f3. Pawn to c5, he can move his queen wherever. I don't think that's correct. c5 looks correct. I'll play it. c5, and now I was thinking bishop d6. Any other moves? Knight h5 hangs my own knight, so something like queen g4 becomes possible. Bishop d6 looks correct to me. Okay, and now if I take, am I getting mated? Let's see. If I take on e5, he checks me, but I have queen b8. Very important. And this, thankfully, not getting mated. Okay, let's keep going. White to play. Go ahead if you would like to pause your video. So the first thing that I notice is this knight has jumped very deep into my territory, and it is, could be trapped, but it is also hitting this c3 pawn. Okay. But it is essentially trapped. So really, a slow move like knight to e2 comes to mind. The idea is, my knight will hold this pawn. Next move is rook a1, trap, winning the knight. The knight has nowhere to go. So that's a move that comes to mind. Any other options? Defending the pawn passively with rook d3 or even c4 doesn't seem right. I think knight to e2 has to be correct. I'm going to play it, and we get above 1900. Okay, so I'm glad, maybe that video went a little bit long, but we made it, and I will see you in the next video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe and comment below what you thought. Thank you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.